morning, everyone. We are missing about 10 parties to reach quorum, so please take a seat and insert your card in the microphone. Thank you. Good morning. We have quorum, so kindly please be seated. We're about to start. Thank you.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, dear delegates. I have a few housekeeping announcements. First of all, on the headsets, we have 5 channels that you can choose from. First, channel 0 is the floor, channel 1 English, channel 2 French, channel 3 Spanish, and I'd also like to inform you that we have Russian interpretation for the whole duration of the COP, thanks to the contribution from Russia, and that will be in channel 8. So Russian language is channel 8. I have a few more housekeeping announcements to inform you that there will be a public announcement system test at 10 p.m. today. And this is for emergency purposes to test the public announcement system. If you especially have rented an office in the venue and you intend to stay later, just be aware that there's a PA system test, so please don't be alarmed by that. There's also a fire drill tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. So this is a fire drill on 27th of November, 7 a.m. If you are at the venue at 7 a.m., you will be asked to evacuate as a part of the fire drill. So if you don't want to do that, you may wish to come a little bit later. The third reminder is to please not forget your card. We had quite a lot of cards that were left in the machines yesterday. So if you have done so, please do come to the technicians on the side here, and they should have collected all of your cards, so they will be able to give that back to you. If you have really lost your card or left it in the hotel, we will have to charge you for the reissuance of cards. Next is that we received some concerns from some parties about people taking photos and filming inside the committee rooms using their personal devices. I would like to remind you that recording of any kind is not allowed after the first 10 minutes of each session, and this includes any personal devices that you may have. The last announcement that from the Secretariat is that the summary records for the first session of Committee 1 and 2 have been published on the website. Thank you, Chair. Apologies. One more announcement. Just to inform you that Norway has asked to be added to the working group on enhancing the work and efficiency of the convention, which was established by this committee yesterday. And this request has been approved by the working group chair as well as the committee chair. The working group met this morning, but they will meet again this evening at 5:30 in Black Stork. It was originally advertised as 5 p.m., but it'll be at 5:30. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat. I will start the session now. The agenda item to start is 25, CITES Gender Action Plan. The document is submitted by the Standing Committee. The Conference of the Parties is invited to renew decisions 19.51 and 19.53, and to revise decision 19.52 to enable submission of the final Gender Action Plan at CoP21. I also draw your attention to the comments section by the Secretariat. The Secretariat does not agree with the renewal of the decisions and instead recommends focusing on implementing Resolution Conference 19.3. I open the floor now. Please be specific as to whether you agree with the renewal or do not agree with the renewal. Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We would like to express that Canada would like to see the renewal of the decision on the Gender Action Plan. We see this as a valuable work, and so to be brief, we prefer to maintain the decision, renew the decision. Thank you.
United States of America.
Thank you, Chair. The United States strongly supports the protection of women and girls in the defense of their rights and their empowerment, and we recognize that men and women may be differently impacted by wildlife trade. However, the work described in the proposed decisions is not within the core mandate of CITES, which aims to ensure that international trade does not threaten species survival. We must bring CITES back to basics and focus its resources on supporting its vital mission. Therefore, the United States opposes the renewal of Decision 19.51 and 19.53 and the revision of Decision 19.52 and believes the decisions should be deleted. Thank you.
United Kingdom, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The UK is committed to tackling gender inequality around the world and welcomes the renewal of the draft decisions as recommended by the Standing Committee. Thank you.
European Union, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The EU and its member states recognize the gender-related roles in wildlife conservation as an important topic to address. We therefore support to address the gender-related issues effectively. We're also open to explore other alternatives to strengthen the implementation of Resolution Conf 19.3 on gender and international trade in wild fauna and flora. Thank you.
Australia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Australia echoes the views of Canada. We'd like to see this work continue. Thank you.
Russian Federation, you have the floor.
Российская Федерация выступает против данного предложения. Полагаем, что вопросы гендера не входят в мандат CITES и призываем стороны вернуться к тому, что предполагает Конвенция для обсуждений. В целом полагаем используемые термины из категории all genders излишними и вызывающими споры у сторон, поэтому целесообразнее вернуться к другим вопросам, чем оставаться на них.
Norway, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Norway would like to echo the views expressed by Canada, the UK, the EU, and Australia. Norway supports the work relating to the CITES Gender Action Plan. Thank you.
Iran, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Islamic Republic of Iran has carefully considered the document regarding the proposed CITES Gender Action Plan. While we acknowledge the intention behind this initiative, we must express our concern regarding the development of a gender action plan within the CITES framework. Firstly, we believe this proposal leads to unnecessary duplication. Numerous overarching United Nations framework and other international mechanisms already comprehensively address gender-related policies and provide extensive guidance. Creating a CITES-specific plan does not demonstrate clear added value. Instead, it results in parallel structure redundancy. Secondly, this initiative imposes significant and unjustified financial and administrative burdens on parties and the Secretariat, as the document itself estimates the development process alone carries a cost of approximately $90,000. These resources, both financial and human, away from the core mandate of the CITES. Madam Chair, the subject matter falls outside the competence and the legal mandate of this convention. CITES is a technical conservation agreement focused on species. The Islamic Republic of Iran firmly believes that the matter of empowerment, including gender-related aspects, must be addressed by each country according to its own socio-economic condition and with full respect for its unique cultural, religious, and traditional values. A one-size-fits-all approach is not practical, effective, or respectful for the sovereignty. Therefore, Madam Chair, we align ourselves with the Secretariat recommendation against renewing the draft decision on the Gender Action Plan. Thank you.
Kuwait, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be short. I align my position with US, Russia, and Iran. Thank you.
New Zealand, you have the floor.
Thank you. We align with Canada, the EU, Australia, and others who supported the retention of these decisions. Thank you.
Indonesia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We are aligning our position with the delegation who opposing the proposal, such as the United States and Iran and other countries. Thank you.
Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We support the views of the EU, UK, Canada, and other parties in supporting the decision. Thank you.
Sudan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Sudan is aligned with the positions of Russian Federation and Iran. Thank you.
Fiji, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Fiji would like to align its position with the statement given by Canada, Australia, and New Zealand.
I now open the floor to non-parties and observer organizations. WWF, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Congratulations on your election, and thank you to Uzbekistan. WWF supports the renewal of Decisions 19.51 and 19.53 and the revision of Decision 19.52. The proposal in Document 25 at CoP19 for the development of a gender action plan was not a token exercise in political correctness. Rather, it was based on a pragmatic assessment of how gender-related factors influence all aspects of wildlife trade, including harvest, legal and illegal trade, enforcement and consumption. In other words, taking these factors into account will deliver better implementation of the Convention. Contrary to the arguments some have made, this is about ensuring that international trade does not affect species survival. It is regrettable that the discussions have become dominated by ideological arguments about the nature, definition, and cultural significance of gender. Speaking on behalf of WWF, we support diversity and inclusion. However, we also support improved implementation of CITES. In this regard, we note that the Convention on Biological Diversity has already negotiated these issues and reached consensus on issues of terminology. Therefore, the ideological differences can be circumvented. Thank you very much.
UAE, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The United Arab Emirates value the extensive efforts made by the Standing Committee and the Secretariat in preparing this document. We fully recognize the importance of promoting inclusivity in the work of the Convention, and we remain committed to implementing Resolution CONF 19.3 within the scope of our national legislations and policy frameworks. However, the UAE is unable to support the adoption of the draft decision as currently formulated. The repeated references to of all genders and gender-responsive terminology introduces concepts that do not reflect universally agreed language under CITES and do not align with the sovereign legal, cultural, and social frameworks of many parties, including our own. Therefore, we align ourselves with the positions of US, Russia, Kuwait, and Iran. Thank you, Chair.
University of Oxford, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. As this is the first time the University of Oxford takes the floor, we extend our appreciation for the committee for the opportunity to address this committee. Researchers at the University of Oxford have examined the evidence on gender in relation to wildlife trade, wildlife crime, and criminal offending more broadly. Implementing the CITES Gender Action Plan is not separate from the Convention's core mandate. Instead, it will enable more targeted, effective, and evidence-based implementation. Decades of research show that women participate across all levels of criminal economies, and that gender shapes attitudes towards wildlife and wildlife management. It is therefore unsurprising that interactions with wildlife, both legal and illegal, vary significantly by gender. People of all genders play multiple roles in wildlife trade. Gender also influences participation in counter-wildlife trafficking efforts, including cooperation with law enforcement. Understanding gender roles and norms is therefore essential for effective, evidence-based responses. Yet gender-sensitive approaches to sustainable wildlife trade remain underutilized. Importantly, they do not require substantial new resources, but rather the integration of existing knowledge to improve targeting and effectiveness. We recognize concerns regarding resource constraints. Universities and NGOs stand ready to support the Secretariat and parties by providing research, analysis, and practical expertise. For these reasons, the University of Oxford supports renewal of Decisions 19.51 and 19.53 and the revision of 19.52. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, observers. Just give me a minute and I'll just get the views and come back again. Okay, so what I'm hearing now, it's quite balanced. So I just want to ask European Union again, when you mentioned that you can be flexible, can I just get more clarity on that? Thank you. European Union, you have the floor.
you, Chair. We're flexible in the way that we support, or we could support, a lot of work to be done promoting or investigating more of these gender-related issues in wildlife. So we firmly support the renewal-based on this item. Thank you.
Thank you, European Union. Congo, you have the floor. Congo, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Dans la législation congolaise, le Parlement et le Président avaient déjà promulgué une loi sur la protection et l'égalité entre les sexes. Et donc, par conséquent, nous soutenons donc la décision de la reconduction de la décision 1951 et 1953, ainsi que la révision de la décision 1952 pour permettre également que ça cadre avec la nouvelle loi qui a été promulguée par le chef de l'État au niveau de notre nation. Merci.
Okay, my suggestion to move forward is to actually renew the decisions 19.51 and 19.53 and to revise 19.52, hearing from the floor. For those that oppose to the proposed decisions, we can actually work on it intersessionally during the standing committee, like looking through the decisions, things that you may not be in favor, it can be amended or removed. So that will be my way forward. Okay, United States of America, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. On this issue, we'd like to call for a vote that these decisions should be deleted. Thank you.
you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We support the way forward recommended by the U.S. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going for the vote now. So this is a vote for agenda item 25. The voting is by normal vote. The vote of the European Union will be cast by the individual member states. So if you vote yes, you support the renewal of 19.51 and 19.53 and revise 19.52. I repeat again, if you vote yes, you support the renewal of 19.51 and 19.53 and revise 19.52. If you vote no, you delete decisions 19.51 through to 19.53. If you vote no, you delete decisions 19.51 through to 19.53. I'll repeat again one last time for both. If you vote yes, you support the renewal of 19.51 and 19.53 and revise 19.52. If you vote no, you delete decisions 19.51 through to 19.53. Since this is a vote on a substantive matter, the decision will be adopted by 2/3 majority. Technician, are you ready? And everyone, can they take their seats now because we are going for a vote? Volunteers, can you please be at the door to make sure no one comes in and out? Thank you.
Please take your seat. Delegates, please take your seats.
Okay, we are ready. So parties, you have 40 seconds to cast your vote. The ballot is open now.
You're not allowed to take photographs. Delegates, please do not take any photographs or make recordings. Thank you.
Okay, 40 seconds is up. The ballot is now closed. Okay, the results shows that 2/3 majority supports the renewal of 19.51 and 19.53 and to revise 19.52. Technicians, please show the results on the main screen. Please also show the individual votes of the parties on the screen now. Thank you, everyone. So the committee accepts the renewal of decisions 19.51 and 19.53 and the revision of decision 19.52 in document CoP20.25. I'll close this agenda item. Thank you. Okay, parties, coming back to the agenda yesterday, document 21, agenda 21. Remember we postponed the discussion on one of the draft decisions 20BB little b because there was mention of the CITES Gender Action Plan, and we agreed to take this after, to come back to this after the the agenda 25. So I'm coming back to this. So based on the decision that was made for agenda 25, can I propose that we accept 20BB little b as it is to retain the paragraph? And I would like to see if there's any objection to this suggestion. Thank you. United States of America.
Thank you, Chair. The United States still supports deleting 20BB. However, we would offer potentially a compromise text as follows. Support and then insert consideration of the particular needs of women and men, and strike the rest of this sentence. Again, the edit would be support, then insert consideration of the particular needs of women and men, striking the rest of the sentence. Thank you.
Indonesia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Indonesia would like to support the proposal of the United States. Thank you.
European Union, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We reject the suggestion by the US and would prefer the original wording. Thank you.
Australia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We also oppose the suggestion by the US and would prefer the retaining of the original language. Thank you.
Kuwait, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We support the proposal made by the US. Thank you.
Fiji, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Fiji would like to join others in opposing the statement made by US and would like to retain the original text.
United Kingdom, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We also don't support the inclusion of this additional language and would like to retain the original drafting. Thank you.
Russian Federation, you have the floor.
Добрый день, спасибо, госпожа председатель. Мы поддерживаем предложение, сделанное делегацией США. В то же время мы хотим предложить возможный компромисс. Нас устроит, если в этом пункте предложение закончится точкой после слов CAP activities. Тогда мы можем согласиться с сохранением пункта «Б» в этой форме. Секретариат, я так понимаю, вы поняли наше предложение, да? Just full stop after CAP activities. Спасибо.
UAE, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We support the proposal of Russia.
New Zealand, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We join those countries who support the original text. Thank you.
Iran, you have the floor.
Thank you. We agree with changing the sentence to the new form. Thank you.
Iran, can you clarify which form, as in US or Russia Federation?
The one that Russia said. Thank you.
Norway, you have the floor.
Thank you. Norway support retaining the original text. Thank you.
United States of America, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The United States cannot accept the edits proposed by Russia, and so in the interest of time, for all of us here in the room, we'd like to call a vote on the deletion of 20BB little b. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to go for a vote. I'm going to go through what you are voting for. If you vote yes, you support retaining 20 BB, little b, support parties, mainstreaming of gender in the development, implementation, and monitoring of CAP activities in line with the forthcoming CITES Gender Action Plan. I repeat again, if you vote yes, you support retaining 20 BB, little b, support parties mainstreaming of gender in the development, implementation, and monitoring of CAP activities in line with the forthcoming CITES Gender Action Plan. If you vote no, you delete 20 BB, little b. I repeat again, if you vote no, you delete 20 BB, little b. Is everyone clear? This is a vote for agenda item 21. The voting type is by normal vote. The vote of the European Union will be cast by individual member states. Since this is a vote on substantive matter, the decision will be adopted by 2/3 majority. Technician, are you ready? Everyone, please take your seat. Okay, I just repeat one more time what you're voting for. If you vote yes, you support retaining 20 BB, little b, support parties, mainstreaming of gender in the development, implementation, and monitoring of CAP activities in line with the forthcoming CITES Gender Action Plan. If you vote no, you delete 20 BB, little b. Parties, you have 40 seconds to cast your vote. The ballot is open now.
Sorry, I see an observer walking. Would volunteers please make sure that there are nobody who's walking around? Thank you.
Forty seconds is up. The ballot is now closed. So the results showed that 2/3 majority supports retaining 20 BB, little b, support parties' mainstreaming of gender in the development, implementation, and monitoring of CAP activities in line with the forthcoming CITES Gender Action Plan. Technician, please show the result on the main screen. Please show the individual votes of the parties on the screen now. Gabon, did you want to give an intervention or you pressed the button wrongly?
Merci, Madame la Présidente. C'est une erreur de manipulation, on s'excuse. Merci.
Okay, so I will close Agenda 21. So we accept the draft decisions on the Compliance Assistance Program contained in annex to the present document, and also delete decisions 19.44 to 19.46. Thank you. Okay, the next agenda item is 27, engagement of indigenous people and local communities. This document is submitted by the Standing Committee. I recall that the Conference of Parties is invited to advise on the preferred terminology when referring to indigenous peoples, local communities, or rural communities. Consider the non-binding guidance on consulting indigenous peoples and local communities on proposals to amend the appendices contained in Annex 1 to the document and agree to the guidance should be published on the CITES website. Adopt the draft decisions contained in Annex 2 of this document. And lastly, agree to delete decisions 17.57, Ref COP 19, 18.31, Ref COP 19, 18.32, Ref COP 19, and 19.54. I would also respectfully remind parties that this matter has been discussed for 3 intersessional periods with limited progress. I also note that in Resolution Conference 16.6, the parties decided on a footnote stating that rural communities include indigenous and local communities, which is in fact the term used in Article 8J of the Convention on Biological Diversity. I now open the floor to parties for their views. Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Canada maintains its position that the engagement of Indigenous peoples in CITES is paramount. We therefore strongly support the adoption of the draft decision and the guidance contained in the annex. From our perspective, the guidance will lead to more comprehensive CITES species listing proposal that take into consideration the valuable perspective and knowledge of Indigenous people who have been stewards and caretakers of land, water, and ice since immemorial. Regarding the terminology, we continue to believe that it's inappropriate to conflate Indigenous peoples with local community into one terminology. While these groups may have similarities, it's important to recognize their distinct circumstances. We urge parties to adopt a standardized terminology that upholds the rights of Indigenous peoples as per the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. Therefore, we strongly recommending adopting the formulation Indigenous peoples, capitalized, comma, as well as local communities. Thank you, Chair.
European Union, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I speak on behalf of the EU and its 27 member states. We recognize the importance of the engagement of Indigenous peoples and local communities in CITES. We support recommendations B, C, and D. We welcome the non-binding guidance as a good basis for further discussions, and we support its publication. We emphasize that such engagement is best addressed at national level. We also emphasize that each convention should consider its own mandate when improving engagement. Regarding recommendation A on the question of standardized terminology, we have no position. Thank you.
Botswana, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Botswana calls for the enhanced involvement of IPLCs in CITES processes. Botswana welcomes the binding guidance on consulting with Indigenous peoples and local communities on proposals to amend the appendices. We are in full support of the draft decisions on Indigenous people and local communities, and we are in full support of the definition that refers to, that makes reference to Indigenous people and local communities. Thank you.
Kenya, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, in terms of terminology, Kenya will want to align with Canada and supports the use of the terms Indigenous peoples and local community separated by a comma. This distinction is essential. The term Indigenous people is universally understood and in many countries associated with specific rights. The local communities varies greatly across context. Therefore, a formulation that maintains the distinctions brings clarity and coherence to the work of CITES. Madam Chair, in regard to the non-binding guidance, we consider that it requires more thorough revision. In its current form, it could impose a significant burden on national authorities attempting to apply it. With your indulgence, we consider it is premature to invite parties to use this guidance in preparing for CoP21. And upon acceptance of parties, we might require to propose some changes depending on your guidance. Thank you.
New Zealand, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. New Zealand strongly supports the adoption of decisions 20AA and 20BB on engagement with Indigenous peoples and local communities. We welcome the non-binding guidance on engagement. It will be a useful tool to guide development of CITES proposals, and it will be able to be updated over time. The conversation on engagement with Indigenous peoples and local communities in CITES processes is not complete, and we strongly support further consideration of engagement with Indigenous peoples at both the national and the international level, and this will be enabled through the next intersessional period by decisions 20BB, B, C and D. Retaining 20BB retaining 20BB little c and its reference back to paragraph 11F of COP20.27 is particularly important for New Zealand. We draw attention to the challenges for Indigenous peoples in travelling between countries with ceremonial or cultural articles that comprise CITES listed specimens. Decision 20BB little c provides the appropriate place for this discussion to take place. On terminology, we support Canada's proposal that maintains the distinction between Indigenous peoples and local communities. Thank you.
India, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. India wished to thank the Standing Committee for the document and to note that CITES decision should not be viewed in isolation, but must align synergistically with the broader international goal, such as post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework and Sustainable Development Goals. India supports a non-binding guidance on consulting Indigenous people and local communities on proposal to amend the appendices, as in Annex 1 to the present document. Thank you, Chair.
United States of America, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The United States maintain the parties' consultations with Indigenous people as well as local communities on CITES processes is a domestic issue for each party and should be conducted at a national level. Regarding the guidance, the United States opposes inclusion of the guidance to the CITES website and agree with Kenya that it is premature as many of it currently resides outside the scope of the CITES mandate. Regarding the draft decisions, the United States can support the adoption of the draft decisions in Annex 2 to the present document with the exception of 20BB little a and 20BB little c, because CITES is a treaty among parties and engagement should take place at the national level. We do not find reviewing parties' experience in using the guidance to make revisions to the document as proposed in 20BB little a to be a sensible use of limited resources. Further, the language in 20BB little c creates an international level engagement mechanism that exceeds CITES' current scope and mandate, which is primarily focused on trade regulation and species conservation, not governance or representation of stakeholder groups. And this could set a precedent for institutionalizing roles for non-state actors in CITES processes without a clear legal framework or consensus. Therefore, we propose deleting 20BB little a and 20BB little c. Regarding standardizing terminology, the United States agrees with Canada's terminology of Indigenous people, capitalized comma, as well as local communities to recognize the distinct status of Indigenous people. The United States recognizes Indigenous people have collective rights. We do not do so for local communities. Thank you, Chair.
Indonesia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We support the draft decision under consideration. However, we strongly oppose regarding the proposal made by Canada. Indonesia underscores the importance of retaining the formulation Indigenous people and local communities as reflected in the document. We do not accept a proposal that detach the two, nor formulations that introduce unequal treatment through capitalization, such as Indigenous people with capital letters while rendering local communities in lowercase. Such distinction risks creating an unintended hierarchy, suggesting that one group carries greater weight or legitimacy than the other. For Indonesia, local communities are integral to conservation and sustainable use and must be recognized on equal footing. To separate or downgrade one would undermine inclusivity and the spirit of consensus that this forum seeks to uphold. We therefore strongly support maintaining the current formulation which reflects balance, respect, and equal recognition. Madam Chair, rights and responsibility must be understood in the broader context of national circumstances, where local communities also play a vital role in conservation and sustainable use. It has long been the consensus in multilateral environment agreement to refer to indigenous people and local communities together. The inclusion of local communities is not intended to diminish or undermine the rights of indigenous people, but rather to ensure broader inclusivity and relevance across diverse national contexts. Indonesia therefore strongly prefers to retain local communities alongside indigenous people as reflected in the text. Indonesia reminds parties of the importance of respecting established consensus and avoiding effort to reopen settled issues. I thank you, Madam Chair.
Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Brazil wishes to reiterate its position, stating that the right terminology is indigenous peoples and local communities, as currently used under CITES. We further recall that this term is consistently applied across other multilateral environmental agreements. In addition, CITES is not the appropriate forum for broader discussions on indigenous peoples and local communities, which are more suitably addressed under the Convention on Biological Diversity. The continued use of this terminology provides a coherent, stable, internationally recognized basis, which, if changed, may risk generating conceptual and legal ambiguities that could inadvertently undermine, relativize, or even negate the rights of local communities in the international fora. Brazil underscores that in many national contexts, including our own, the separation between indigenous peoples and local communities is neither feasible nor reflective of social, cultural, or territorial realities. These groups frequently inhabit shared landscapes, maintain long-standing relationships with the environment, and contribute collectively to conservation and sustainable use. Their roles are complementary and mutually reinforcing, and cannot be meaningfully separated through terminology that fails to capture these lived realities. Preserving the term indigenous peoples and local communities is essential to ensure consistency across multilateral environmental agreements. Brazil, therefore, strongly advocates for the continued use of the terminology already consolidated under CITES and other environmental agreements. As we have already stated at Standing Committee 78, indigenous peoples and local communities are vulnerable groups that should not be separated even by a comma. Thank you.
Mexico, you have the floor.
Gracias, señora presidenta. México apoya lo expresado por Canadá y la redacción propuesta por Canadá. Muchas gracias, presidenta.
Congo, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Au niveau du Congo, depuis le 25, en prenant la description qui est faite au C où nous parlons des peuples autochtones et communautés locales, et nous ne pouvons pas les dissocier, soit par une virgule ou par n'importe quel mot. Ce sont deux communautés qui doivent être mises ensemble, communautés, peuples autochtones et communautés locales. Au niveau du B, nous acceptons ce qui est proposé par le secrétariat sur les orientations non contraignantes sur la consultation des peuples autochtones et de communautés locales au sujet des positions d'amendement des annexes. Et je vous remercie.
Zimbabwe, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me the floor. Zimbabwe also joins Botswana and other parties in welcoming the non-binding documents and we look forward to their publication on the website. It's very important that we consider indigenous peoples and local communities inside the decision-making processes. On technology, Chair, we support the use of indigenous peoples and local communities as one phrase, bearing in mind that the original intent and objective of this phrase was to make sure that these two constituencies are treated as one. And this is also in line with CBD Article 8J, as well as the provisions in the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, which continues to use the term as one phase throughout. It's very important that we keep that phrase as a unity. Thank you very much, Chair.
Lau PDR, you have the floor.
Yeah, Liberia would like to see the phrase indigenous people and local community maintained, and therefore Liberia would like to align itself with Kenya and Zimbabwe. Thank you, Madam.
Lau PDR, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. While recent CITES resolutions such as CON 16.6, Resolution CoP19, and Resolution 18.8 place increasing emphasis on the role and contribution of indigenous people, this terminology does not correspond to the international law and administrative framework of Lao People Democratic Republic. Lao PDR does not formally recognize any population group as indigenous people. Within this constitution, sectoral law or implementing regulations. Consequently, applying this terminology in CITES decision risks creating consistency with domestic legislation, ambiguity in implementation, and intended legal application. For this reason, Lao PDR maintains that reference to local community should not be deleted, and the terminology must retain aligned with national law while fully support the Convention objectives on community participatory and traditional knowledge. Thank you, Madam.
Senegal, you have the floor.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Cette question, voilà la troisième COP qu'elle est débattue. Nous estimons que pour la participation des populations, des peuples autochtones et locaux à la CITES, c'est une bonne idée noble. Mais ça serait de redondance ou bien une sorte de doublement parce que les partis sont là en tant que mandataires du peuple. Nous sommes à la solde du peuple sénégalais. Donc, et nous venons ici pour défendre les intérêts du peuple sénégalais dans un cadre international. Nous voulons bien que ces populations puissent participer. Mais à quel prix? Hier seulement, on a parlé de la représentativité. Le secrétariat, selon les circonstances, ne prend en compte qu'un représentant par pays. Vous nous demandez encore de faire venir les populations locales ici, les peuples autochtones, ça pose problème. Parce que la réalité est là, il ne faut pas se la voiler. Nos pays ne mettent pas assez de ressources financières dans l'environnement. Qui va prendre en charge ces populations-là? Nous sommes là en tant que mandataires de notre peuple, donc je crois que ça suffit. Ces questions doivent être prises en compte par les législations nationales. Quant à la terminologie, ça pose problème quand on veut vouloir dire peuple autochtone avec A majuscule et communauté locale en minuscule. Vous êtes en train de hiérarchiser, donc de vouloir mettre une séparation dans une entité sociale qui est là. J'entends par autochtone ceux qui sont originaires du milieu et qui habitent là pendant longtemps. La communauté locale peut être un mélange des autochtones et des étrangers qui sont venus habiter dans la zone. Alors, quand on va parler de questions de développement, il vaut mieux les mettre ensemble. Mais si vous les séparez, nous sommes en train d'induire une scission qui n'est pas socialement acceptable. Voilà la position du Sénégal. Merci.
Norway, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Norway supports recommendations 19B, C, and D. When it comes to terminology, our views align with those expressed by Canada, and we support the wording proposed by Canada with a distinction between Indigenous peoples and local communities. Indigenous peoples and local communities are different groups with varying degrees of connection to their territories and traditions. Local communities are groups of people living together who are not necessarily from the area, whereas Indigenous peoples originate from a specific area and therefore hold specific collective rights. Thus, in our view, in the relevant text, it should be differentiated between the term Indigenous peoples and the term local communities. And as we said, we support the proposal expressed by Canada. Thank you.
Russian Federation, you have the floor.
Спасибо, госпожа председатель. Хочу сказать, что мы полностью поддерживаем позиции, высказанные ранее Индией, Индонезией, Бразилией, Зимбабве. Мы считаем общий вопрос консультаций и участия коренных народов и местных общин в работе по разным направлениям СИТЕС крайне важным направлением, и поэтому в целом поддерживаем проекты и 20AA, и 20BB. В то же время мы хотим отметить особенно вопрос терминологии. Нас очень беспокоят проявляющиеся здесь попытки целого ряда стран фрагментировать и разделить ряд сестринских конвенций по биоразнообразию и использовать платформу CITES для такой дезинтеграции. Как отметили другие страны, есть устоявшаяся система терминологии. Более того, в рамках Сестринской конвенции о биологическом разнообразии существует глоссарий терминологии в области коренных народов и местных общин. И даже более того, конвенция начинает работу по пересмотру и обновлению этого глоссария. Мы считаем, что принимать разные термины в разных, особенно сестринских конвенциях, это крайне деструктивный подход. Поэтому мы полностью поддерживаем тех, кто хочет сохранить терминологию коренные народы и местные общины. И предлагаем сторонам серьезно задуматься о попытках использования CITES для фрагментации терминологического ландшафта. Что касается вопросов, связанных с руководящими принципами, мы согласны с теми странами, которые говорят, что на сегодняшний день эти принципы требуют доработки. Поэтому нам кажется, вместо того, чтобы начинать сразу серьезно требовать от стран их использования, мы бы предпочли процесс, на основании которого не постоянный комитет, а стороны конвенции представят свои рекомендации и соображения в секретариат о том, насколько эти принципы рабочие или нет. И мы согласны с теми странами, которые говорят, что это вопрос национального уровня. И уже на основании таких...
Russia Federation, the time is up. Can you wrap up, please? Thank you.
И на основании уже таких сообщений от сторон пересмотреть, если необходимо, эти руководящие принципы. Спасибо.
China, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. China appreciates the efforts made by the Standing Committee and the Working Group to promote effective community participation at the CITES level. With regard to Recommendation A, China supports the continued use of the existing formulation indigenous peoples and local communities in the Convention. China also supports recommendations B, C, and D. We are of the view that effective community participation is reflected not only in consultations at the national level, and that stressing community engagement in CITES international processes is equally essential. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I still see a very long list of parties. I more or less have all the views, and I think we more or less know what the views are, and I will try to see the way forward. But I will open the floor first to non-parties and observer organizations. Conservation Force, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let me make briefly an appeal to the parties. It seems to me that we have the same parties at the international level are fully recognizing the importance of indigenous people and local communities in conservation. And some parties in this room are not following what their government in other fora has said and approved. This is a fundamental human rights issue, Madam Chair. Indigenous people and local communities are critical to conservation, and they have the right to participate in international decision-making, not only national. So we would like to align ourselves with Canada, and especially now with China, in their proposals to support fully this document, the content of the guidance, and the decision annexed to this document. Please, party, we need unity here, because we are talking about people which depends on wildlife for their livelihoods. Thank you very much.
Nunga Ingwi o Tanaraki, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tēnā koutou katoa, tēnā hoki koutou te whānau o Uzbekistan. Te tōpuni ngarahu, Ngā Iwi o Taranaki is a collective of 8 Indigenous Māori peoples from the region of Taranaki in Aotearoa, New Zealand. This is our 5th International CITES Forum attendance between COP19 and now. We have, to our knowledge, been the only group attending who identify specifically as Indigenous people. Today I also represent Toi Aotearoa Creative New Zealand, our government's arts funding agency, which fully supports Māori and wider Oceanic voices calling on CITES to recognise and include Indigenous voices in work streams and decisions pertaining to us about our cultural traditions. CITES heavily impacts us, and to that end we fully support New Zealand and Canada's comments. Stringent CITES regulations significantly and consistently impede full and authentic inclusion of taonga, our cultural sacred items, for ceremonial use, artistic expression and personal adornment in Indigenous settings and cultural exchanges across Te Moana Nui a Kiwa, the Pacific and the world. Last week, a collective of more than 100 Indigenous peoples from around the world attended a workshop at the World Indigenous Peoples Conference on Education in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and supported our call for CITES to recognise Indigenous knowledge systems, interspecies and intercultural relationships, where marine mammal resources are given further life and significance through cultural artistic practices. I offer this document to this COP for further consideration on behalf of those who supported. We strongly support the simplification of processes for the international movement of our taonga, our sacred cultural items, especially as precedent has already been set in relation to the cross-border movement of musical instruments. We offer our help to continue with the dialogue within CITES during the intercessional period regarding Indigenous peoples' participation. We fully support the removal of barriers to Indigenous attendance, and we support looking to other bodies for suitable models of engagement.
Sorry, the time is, can you wrap up because it's more than 2 minutes.
Thank you. And we especially look forward to being able to freely travel with our taonga, our sacred cultural items. Thank you, Madam Chair.
David Shepherd Wildlife Foundation, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm speaking on behalf of 10 observer organizations. We support the views expressed by Kenya and the US and Canada on this distinction between Indigenous peoples and local communities, and Russia on reconsidering the non-binding guidance, and the EU that engagement is best addressed at the national level. We have significant concerns about the proposed non-binding guidance, which we consider is not ready for adoption. Several provisions could place unnecessary procedural expectations on parties when preparing listing proposals. By introducing elements unrelated to the biological and trade criteria of Resolution Conf 9.24, the guidance risks complicating the listing process and slowing urgently needed conservation action. With regard to engagement of Indigenous peoples and local communities in CITES processes, we respectfully underline that CITES already provides transparent and fair mechanisms for observers open to all stakeholder groups, including Indigenous peoples and local communities. Any effort to enhance engagement should occur within national systems where governments have the authority and capacity to consult communities in ways that reflect domestic legal frameworks and cultural contexts. Creating new international level processes within CITES could stretch the Convention beyond its mandate and duplicate work already being advanced in other multilateral fora, notably the Convention on Biological Diversity. We therefore encourage parties to keep CITES focused on its core purpose and to support meaningful, inclusive participation at the level where it is most effective, national decision-making processes. Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving us the floor.
Okay, thank you all. I would like to just discuss 19B, C, and D first, and then come back to the terminology later on, because there's quite a bit of discussion on it. So for 19B on the non-binding guidance, I think there was no objection for it to be posted on the website, and also it is voluntary, it is non-binding, so I would like to see, my preference is that we move on with this and put it on the website for reference. Are there any strong objections? Technician, can you please clear the screen? Thank you. United Kingdom, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. It's not an objection, but more of a correction specifically to the second guiding principle to correct the reference to the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples by adding an S to people in the second guiding principle. And then once that's amended, we're happy with that publication. Thank you.
United States of America, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The United States opposes inclusion of the non-binding guidance to the CITES website. We would like to make a motion for a vote in accordance with Rule 23 of Rules of Procedure on publishing the guidance as presented in Annex 1 of the present document.
Okay, United States of America, I'll come back to the vote for B later on. Okay, I don't see any more requests from the floor, so I will go to C now, which is adopt draft decisions on Indigenous people and local communities in Annex 2. I also do not hear, as in I hear more support for all these to be adopted, so I just wanted to see if there's any objection for me to move forward to adopt these draft decisions. Yeah, United States of America, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. While we could accept 20 BBA, we are still opposed to 20 BBC. But we would like to propose a way forward for that one by proposing to narrow the scope of 20 BBC to exploratory discussions only without committing to specific mechanisms or outcomes, such as consider opportunities and limitations for engagement in a manner consistent with the mandate of the Convention and respecting the domestic legal frameworks of parties. Thank you.
Russian Federation, you have the floor.
Госпожа председатель, мы, как уже говорили, не против принятия этих решений, однако в пункте 20AA мы сказали, мы не согласны с направлением сторонам для использования этих руководящих принципов, как было отмечено целым рядом стран и наблюдателей. Поэтому мы считаем, что вместо слова «использование» должно быть, как мы предложили. Речь идет о получении со стороны сторон комментариев к этим принципам, насколько они могут быть использованы для дальнейшей их возможной доработки, а не использования. При этом мы поддерживаем идею о публикации этих принципов на сайте конвенции, поскольку стороны должны реагировать на какой-то документ, поэтому важно иметь его на веб-сайте конвенции. Спасибо. В остальном мы можем поддержать эти решения. Спасибо.
Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We just wanted to respond to some of the comments that were raised and see if we can help. So in regards to the textual amendment that were proposed to 20AA, little a, regarding the use of the non-binding guidance, I mean, we've heard a lot of support for the guidance, and we just want to remind party that there's been extensive discussion in the working group on this, and we've received good input, share some perspectives. So we would certainly like to invite parties to use it, but we also want to point to parties that under C, there's the element of sharing the views and experience in using this guidance. So we can get feedback and keep this as a sort of a live document that can be improved. So that's our first point on the comment made. With respect to 20 BBC, we would like to maintain the original text. I think that identify opportunity and limitation doesn't bind us to a specific outcome, but it's just an exploration phase. So our position would be to maintain the text as is. And I just want to just put a pin when you come back to A. We do have a compromise approach on the terminology, so would appreciate introducing that when we get to that. Thank you.
Okay, so from the views of that I've heard is that it seems that B has, as in C is also related to B. So I just want to ask United States of America again, is that for the vote, we are looking, as in the vote is to look at whether the guidance should be published on the website or not to be published on the website. Am I right?
Correct.
Okay, so then I would suggest that we go for a vote on B first before we come back to discussion on C, because I think there'll be some impact on it. So just hang on and I will repeat again what we're going to vote for later on. Okay, I'm going to proceed to a vote for recommendation 19B. If you vote yes, you support the publication of the guidance on the website. Okay, I repeat again. If you vote yes, you support the non-binding guidance on consulting Indigenous peoples and local communities on proposals to amend the appendices on the website. If you vote no, you do not support the publication of the non-binding guidance on consulting Indigenous peoples and local communities on proposals to amend the appendices on the website. Okay, I repeat again. If you vote no, you do not support the publication of the non-binding guidance on consulting Indigenous peoples and local communities on proposals to amend the appendices on the website. Is that clear? DRC, you have the floor.
No, sorry, madam, that was an error.
This is a vote for agenda item 27. The voting is by normal vote. The vote of the European Union will be cast by the individual member states. Since this is a vote on a substantive matter, the decision will be adopted by 2/3 majority. Technician, are you ready? Okay, I'll repeat what you're voting for again one last time. If you vote yes, you support the publication of the non-binding guidance on consulting Indigenous peoples and local communities on proposals to amend appendices on the website. If you vote no, it means you do not support the publication of the non-binding guidance on consulting Indigenous peoples and local communities on proposals to amend appendices on the website. Parties, you have 40 seconds to cast your vote. The ballot is open now. 40 seconds is up. The ballot is now closed. So the result is 2/3 majority supports the publication of the non-binding guidance on consulting indigenous peoples and local communities on proposals to amend appendices on the website. Technician, please show the result on the main screen. Please show the individual vote of the parties on the screen. Thank you. United States of America, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Apologies for taking the floor again, but I would just like it noted that the United States, that the guidance on consulting indigenous people on the proposals to amend the appendices contain gender-responsive language, which is not within the core mandate of CITES. Thank you, Chair.
Noted, United States of America. Thank you. Uzbekistan, you have the floor.
Нет, случайно было нажато, мы проголосовали за.
Okay, so now we will go back to the decisions. So for 20AA little a, I am suggesting edit, and I would want to see if there is any objection. So for 20AA little a, parties are invited to consider the use, consider using the non-binding guidance. So it is still voluntary. You can consider to use or not to use. So I repeat again, 20AA little a, parties are invited to consider using the non-binding guidance. Are there any strong objections to my suggestion? Thank you very much for the compromise. So for 20A little a, we will amend it to parties are invited to consider using the non-binding guidance. Thank you.
With the amendment.
So with the amendment, I just want to ask the floor again. Will we also accept 20AA B, little b, and little c? Okay, I see none from the floor. Can we go to 20BB? Little a to little d. I see no one request for the floor for 20BB, little a to little d. So we will go ahead and accept the decisions in 20AA and 20BB. And now I go to recommendations 19D, deleting decisions 17.57 Ref Corp 19, 18.31 Ref Corp 19, 18.32 Ref Corp 19, and 19.54. I see no request from the floor, so the committee will accept the deletion of these decisions in 19D. So now we come back again to 19A on the terminology. I give the floor to Canada.
Thank you, Chair. And we've listened carefully to the intervention by parties on this issue, and we certainly see that there's no consensus, and we need to continue discussion. However, we note that the Convention on Biological Diversity, more specifically its permanent body on Article 8J that was just established, is working on a process to review their glossary of terms, which include the terminology that we're discussing here. So in the interest of time, we would recommend pausing this discussion and waiting to see what the CBD comes up with. Thank you.
Is there any objection with Canada's suggestion? Okay, so we will stay with using the current language in the footnote. Okay, I see no request from the floor. Thank you so much. And we will close this item. So I'll just repeat what we have accepted. So the the committee accepts that we have agreed to continue using the current terminology for 19 little a, and then for 19b little b, the non-binding guidance on consulting indigenous people and local communities on proposals to amend the appendices will be published on the website. And 19C, the committee accepts the draft decisions on indigenous peoples and local communities in Annex 2 with the edit in 20AA little a, where parties are invited to consider using the non-binding guidance. And C, delete decisions 17.57, Ref Corp 19, 18.31, Ref Corp 19, 18.32, Ref Corp 19, and 19.54. I close this item. Thank you. The next agenda item is 28, which is a discussion of a draft resolution on the creation of a subcommittee of people living alongside fauna and flora and a related voluntary fund. I call on Zimbabwe to introduce the document. Zimbabwe, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, Zimbabwe believes that the realities of the challenges faced by people living alongside CITES listed fauna and flora are yet to be fully understood by the global community and can best be described by the same people. The existence of overabundant wildlife populations in countries such as Zimbabwe is the result of decades of effective policies and management actions founded on sustainable use and a full involvement and engagement of people living with wildlife. This successful model, whose very existence now faces collapse due to the exclusion of such communities by the Convention. Zimbabwe appreciates that the Convention recognizes that peoples and states are and should be the best protectors of their own wildlife fauna, wild fauna and flora, and that the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples respectively affirm that indigenous peoples have the right to participate in decision-making in matters which would affect their rights, and that the ways and means of ensuring participation of indigenous peoples on issues affecting them shall be established. Chair, Zimbabwe is willing to consider proposing the establishment. Rather, there's a small change that we are now proposing to the original document of a permanent forum on indigenous peoples and local communities, and in particular, people living alongside species of wild fauna and flora included in CITES appendices, instead of an advisory subcommittee of the Standing Committee, if this is acceptable to the parties, bearing in mind decisions which have taken place this morning and yesterday that we changed this to a permanent forum. Mindful of this, Zimbabwe now presents a draft resolution included in Appendix 1 to the present document, which asks Chair for just three things. One, establish a permanent forum on indigenous people and local communities, and in particular people living alongside wild species of wild fauna and flora. Two, establish a voluntary fund for people living alongside wild species of fauna and flora's participation in this permanent forum as a way of allowing full and effective participation of the same people. Thank you very much, Chair. We are very much welcome to modifications of this draft resolution by parties. Thank you.
Thank you, Zimbabwe. I now open the floor, but also I'd like to draw your attention to the comments by the Secretariat on this proposal. Botswana, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Botswana has always been an advocate of the full participation of peoples and communities in CITES decision-making mechanisms. Our communities living alongside wildlife are our stewards of our biodiversity, and their voices must be heard when decisions affecting their livelihoods are made. We wish to commend Zimbabwe and call for the adoption of the draft resolution as amended in COP Doc 28. Thank you.
United States of America, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The United States is sympathetic to the needs of local communities living alongside wildlife, but the convention is a treaty among parties and is incumbent on parties in their national process as appropriate to consult broadly, including local peoples. Therefore, the United States opposes adoption of the proposed draft resolution in the present document. We believe that the creation of a permanent subcommittee as contemplated in the document would not only be inconsistent with established procedures of the parties and redundant of existing terms of reference of the permanent committees and existing resolutions, but it would also add another layer of decision-making and an unacceptable budgetary obligation that does not align with the U.S. budgetary policy of zero nominal growth. Thank you, Chair.
Kenya, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, Kenya has consistently had this position, including at COP17, 18 and 19, when similar proposal was brought before the COP. In COP20, document 27, an engagement of ILPLC that we have just discussed, we were able to a non-binding guidance on engaging indigenous people and local communities for use of parties at national level as they deem necessary. And so we consider that issues of people living alongside flora and fauna species included in the CITES as appendixes can be adequately addressed at the national level through such process. For transparencies and openness in discussion of this matter, Kenya opposes the call for a closed session as requested in para 11 of this document, and also want to align with the US on the comment on including a permanent committee, not including a permanent committee on engagement of indigenous people. I thank you, Madam Chair.
Russian Federation, you have the floor.
Спасибо, госпожа председатель. Прежде всего мы хотим поблагодарить Зимбабве за то, что они подняли очень важную тему в разрезе этой конвенции и многих других процессов. Вовлечение тех сообществ на местах, которые живут рядом с дикими видами, в том числе включенными в приложение CITES, они играют очень важную роль, в том числе для контроля браконьерства, контроля нелегальной торговли, контроля вовлеченности в преступные организованные группы. Поэтому слышать их голос и их пожелания очень важно, особенно в таких странах, где десятки людей ежегодно гибнут в результате конфликта между человеком и дикой природой. Мы также особенно хотим поблагодарить Зимбабве, и я надеюсь, другие страны услышали выступление Зимбабве, что они предложили другой вариант. Они не настаивают на создании специального комитета в рамках конвенции. Мы тоже выражаем сомнения по поводу такого комитета. Но давайте услышим, что предложила Зимбабве. Предложила две вещи. Создать постоянный форум, и примеры такого есть в Сестринских конвенциях. Секретариат может организовать в течение выходных дней между двумя неделями заседаний такую неформальную площадку для тех организаций, местных сообществ и коренных народов, которые в этом заинтересованы и присутствуют на совещании. Это не является органом конвенции, но это будет постоянной площадкой, где эти сообщества и организации могут обмениваться мнением. Такие примеры есть, и они успешны. Второе. Зимбабве предложила создать добровольный фонд взносов, наверное, траст-фонд, в который на добровольной основе страны могут вносить ресурсы для обеспечения участия представителей организаций коренных народов и местных общин в работе CITES. Такая практика также есть в Сестринских конвенциях, и она достаточно успешна. Поэтому, если Зимбабве готова пересмотреть свое требование и ограничить документ этими двумя пунктами, то мы такой документ поддержим. Документ в том виде, в какой он есть, к нему много претензий, мы его поддержать не можем, но учитывая гибкость Зимбабве, мы поддержим их новое предложение. Спасибо.
Bahrain, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Bahrain thanks Zimbabwe for its proposal and supports the idea of including local communities in CITES decisions. However, Bahrain does not agree with the draft decisions for these reasons. Number one, CITES rules say that the only member countries can be part of the official committees, not individuals or local communities. This is important to respect the international systems and each country authorities. Second, countries can already include representatives of local communities in their own delegations and national consultations. Making a new committee would make CITES more complicated and expensive, especially since CITES already has financial challenges. Third, many other international agreements have informal groups for local communities, but they are not official decision makers. Number four, making a special fund for this could cause confusions because there are other funds already working in CITES that countries can be used. Fifth, Bahrain suggests to continue discussions how to include local communities in the current working groups and documents without creating a formal committee. In summary, Bahrain supports community participations and the rights of local people, but Bahrain believes this proposal could make CITES less effective and more costly. Instead, Bahrain recommends improved consultations with the local communities with the leadership of member countries using the current system. Thank you, Chair.
Namibia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Namibia supports the draft resolutions proposed by Zimbabwe as appear in Annex 1, CoP20, Doc 28. Thank you, Chair.
United Kingdom, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The UK would like to thank Zimbabwe for this proposal, and the UK acknowledges the importance of hearing the views of people living alongside wildlife. As such, we have given this paper, and in particular the proposal for a new subcommittee and voluntary fund, very careful consideration, and we would align with the comments from the USA and Kenya and others in not supporting the proposal. We do not feel it would be the best way to achieve improved engagement with people living alongside wildlife or the best use of limited resources available to us. Bahrain has noted Resolution 18.2 on establishment of committees stipulates that only members of the relevant committees and other parties are entitled to be members of a subcommittee. In other words, representatives of people living alongside wildlife would not be eligible for membership to the subcommittee and would nonetheless need to be represented by their relevant party. We have also have concerns that this proposal would duplicate effort. Much work has already been done on the creation of guidance for the engagement with Indigenous peoples and local communities in Document 27, which we've just discussed before this item, and we believe it is appropriate for us to allow the time for those guidelines to be used before any further action is taken on this issue. Thank you.
Senegal, you have the floor.
Merci Madame la Présidente. Nous aimerions tout d'abord féliciter le Zimbabwe pour avoir pris l'initiative de proposer une telle résolution qui, à mon avis, est très importante. Nous restons convaincus qu'en tant que gestionnaire de la faune et des aires protégées, que nous ne saurions garder longtemps la biodiversité dans ces sites si les populations ne se retrouvent pas dans ce que nous faisons. Par contre, demander la création d'un sous-comité au niveau de la CITES pour prendre en compte cette question viendrait alourdir la tâche au secrétariat. Donc, c'est à mon avis un domaine qui sort hors de la CITES et que des propositions similaires ont été rejetées à la COP 17, 18 et 19. Voilà, nous sommes à la 20e COP. J'invite personnellement, en tout cas c'est le modèle sénégalais que nous avons, de prendre cette question par nos textes nationaux. Remonter au niveau international, ça reviendrait très lourd pour nous. Nous sommes là pour le développement socio-économique de nos populations. Par conséquent, elles doivent se retrouver dans ce que nous faisons au niveau local. Au niveau international, c'est juste une représentation que nous faisons au compte du peuple, parce que nous sommes des mandataires du peuple. Merci.
India, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. India wish to thank Zimbabwe for CoP20 Doc 2028. India feels that Animal Committee, Plant Committee, and Standing Committee have been mandated with the task related to assisting the COP in implementation of relevant decisions. Creation of further advisory committee specifically for one issue may become a precursor for establishment of such advisory committees for every issue being deliberated in the COP, which is not a healthy sign. Moreover, the conference of parties, animal committees, plant committees, and standing committee may create an inter-sessional working group for detailed deliberation if they so require. Therefore, India is not agree for the concerned proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Iran, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. While the Islamic Republic of Iran recognizes the importance of engaging local communities in conservation efforts, Iran does not support the adoption of this draft resolution. The proposed subcommittee contradicts the legal framework of CITES, as clearly stated. Only representatives of parties are eligible to be members of any subcommittee under the Convention. The proposed structure, which intends to include non-party representatives, falls outside this legal foundation and risks creating a precedent that undermines the intergovernmental nature of CITES. We believe that the meaningful participation of local communities can and should be facilitated within existing national framework and through mechanisms already available under CITES. Creating a separate formal subcommittee is neither legally sound nor financially feasible. Thank you.
China, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. China understands the concerns expressed by the proponent. We agree that local communities should have a full role in CITES decision-making process, and we support Russia's viewpoint. Thank you, Chair.
Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. And at the outset, we just want to say that Canada really appreciates Zimbabwe's effort to highlight the need to further our engagement for the effective participation of Indigenous peoples and local community inside these processes. And we agree that those living closely with wildlife have important voice and contribution to make to the successful implementation of CITES decision and outcome. And so while we support the premise that more needs to be done to facilitate their engagement, at this time we're not ready to support the idea of adopting a mechanism without having heard more from Indigenous peoples and local communities on the modalities of the proposal. From what we're hearing in the room, it seems that many parties are supporting the intent. And so maybe in alignment with many parties, our preference would be to continue to explore these ideas on how we engage Indigenous peoples and local communities in the next intersessional period, and we've agreed to a strong decision in the previous agenda item. So bringing those ideas forward in this context could be a way to continue the proposal submitted by Zimbabwe. So a couple of reflection on our side here. Thank you.
Mexico, you have the floor.
Muchas gracias, señora
Presidenta. México, al igual que Canadá y otras delegaciones, observa con mucha atención esta propuesta para crear un subcomité asesor y un fondo voluntario específico, y nos parece que es un paso adecuado en la dirección correcta. Es necesario explorar cuáles son las mejores modalidades para poder incorporar las visiones de nuestras comunidades locales, de nuestros pueblos indígenas y de comunidades que son afectadas por el comercio ilícito de las especies en peligro. Sin embargo, al igual que otros, tenemos preocupaciones por las implicaciones financieras y operativas, y nos preocupa también la creación de estructuras nuevas que puedan generar cargas adicionales o que puedan tener mandatos difusos. En ese sentido, apoyamos la propuesta formulada hace un momento por Canadá de seguir explorando cuál será la mejor manera para poder beneficiarnos del input directo de estas comunidades. En el caso, quisiera simplemente mencionar el caso del convenio de Minamata, que hace 2 semanas adoptó una decisión en la que se invitó a las partes y al secretariado a buscar la manera de lograr, sin crear estructuras adicionales, de lograr la inclusión de las visiones de las comunidades en las discusiones de la conferencia de las partes. Muchas gracias.
I open the floor now to non-parties and observer organizations. Conservation Force.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the interest of time, Madam Chair, I would like to point out that probably parties have not gathered the fact that Zimbabwe has offered an amendment to its document. This has been captured only by Russia in what I've seen until now. So I would like to request your indulgence, Madam Chair, in the use of Rule 22. Probably it's much better that Zimbabwe present and circulate the amended version in which they are not requesting anymore to establish a permanent subcommittee, but a forum. So in the interest of time, Madam Chair, I think that if you can allow, in accordance with Rule 22, Zimbabwe to present the amended version and discuss this at a later stage. Thank you.
WCS, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. WCS urges the parties to reject this draft resolution, although we are sympathetic to many of the concerns raised. We appreciate the interventions of UK, Bahrain, Kenya, and others. The document suggests creation of an advisory subcommittee for people living alongside species of wild fauna and flora, or a permanent forum, whatever that would be. We recommend that parties not adopt this new term. It is ambiguous, confusing, but most importantly, inconsistent with international law. Indigenous peoples, in many cases, have specific rights under national and international law, independent of their proximity and to species of wild fauna and flora. And this terminology may actually be seen to exclude indigenous peoples, which we find unacceptable. We agree it's vital at the local and national level to collaborate with and respect people living alongside fauna and flora. That's core to our work. But that's not the same as including local people in CITES decision-making processes, which are made by you, the sovereign states. We don't see the need for a new advisory committee or permanent forum. CITES is already overburdened. We trust the parties to consult and engage local communities and indigenous peoples at the national level, and as stated by Senegal, and you just agreed to post the non-binding guidance and recommend parties consider that. We believe the text confuses COP decision-making and somehow advising the Standing Committee. We oppose establishing a fund to allow, again, people living alongside fauna and flora to help prepare common positions for the COP, because that excludes indigenous people. We don't know how those representatives would be chosen. Positions here are taken by you, the parties. We oppose, in conclusion, the proposed advisory subcommittee or permanent forum, and it's not the role of the Standing Committee. One second. The Standing Committee does not take positions on proposals. That is the sole right of parties. We respect the concerns raised, but recommend rejection of this resolution. Thank you.
Pro-wildlife, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I speak on behalf of 10 observer organizations. We would like to express our strong support for the concerns already raised by Kenya, Senegal, India, Iran, Bahrain, the UK and the United States, and we, like WCS, reject this proposal. From our perspective as civil society observers, the proposal to establish an advisory subcommittee raises serious challenges for the integrity of CITES governance. A new formal body for a select group of non-party stakeholders would shift CITES beyond its mandate and blur the distinction between parties who hold decision-making authority and observers. We recognize the importance of enabling indigenous peoples and local and rural communities to engage meaningfully in CITES. However, we consider this engagement should be primarily through national processes, where governments are responsible for ensuring inclusive consultation and representation. Creating a new CITES subcommittee would exceed the Convention's mandate and could marginalize some civil society voices, in particular community organizations that do not engage in, rely on, or support trade-based approaches. It would unbalance the observer community by formally privileging certain voices over others. Communities already have pathways to engage in CITES. Local and rural organizations can register and participate as observers, and many NGOs do. Parties can and should help raise awareness of this option and support community organizations in navigating the process. Finally, we are also concerned about the suggestion to discuss this agenda item in a closed session. Excluding the public and observers from this discussion would diminish trust in the process.
Pro-wildlife, can you please wrap up?
And thank you, I'm finished. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Dallas Safari Club, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dallas Safari Club strongly supports document 28, and as pointed out by Conservation Force, Zimbabwe is open to any amendments to this. The people living alongside wildlife are its true custodians. They have chosen to protect it and bear the greatest burden of conservation costs. Yet they have no vote, no voice, and they literally walk in the dark. What is sought here is more than mere observer status. Let's be serious about this crucial human rights issue. It's time to put the semantics away and align CITES with other multilateral environmental agreements that already recognize indigenous people and local communities' participation as fundamental to conservation success. CITES decisions directly impact their livelihoods, food security, and human well-being. They must have meaningful consultation and institutional representation through the proposal. On national levels don't always provide that. You cannot protect wildlife without the people who live with it. DEC urges adoption of this document in alignment with Zimbabwe. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I think I can propose a way forward. I think I did not see much consensus in supporting of this resolution, but everyone was supporting the intent. I think everyone appreciated the effort of Zimbabwe and also the work done, and that there should be continuation of the work. So Canada had a suggestion in order to continue the work. It is to actually include this document 28 into document 27. the previous document that we discussed into one of the decisions, 20BB little c, so as to continue the work intersessionally. So I just want to see from the floor if there's any objections. So I'll just repeat again. So I think Canada's suggestion was to include document 28, the mention of document 28 into document 27, Annex 2, 20BB, little c, after in document SC 78.27 and document COP20.28. Technician, can you please clear the screen? Thanks. Yeah, so I just want to see if there's any objection to that suggestion so that we can move forward to continue the work. Russian Federation, you have the floor.
Госпожа председатель, спасибо. У нас нет как таковых возражений, и, конечно, мы считаем, что продолжить работу стоит. Я хочу только поделиться некоторыми наблюдениями. Нам очень жалко, что многие делегации зачитывали свои домашние заготовки на основании исходного документа 28, вместо того, чтобы реально среагировать на предложение Зимбабве, которое было сделано в ходе заседания. Мы также хотим рассмотреть возможность того, что предложил один из наших коллег из наблюдателей, воспользоваться правилами конвенции и дать возможность Зимбабве представить обновленную версию, в которой нет никакого комитета, коллеги. Зачем вы об этом говорите, если Зимбабве сняла это предложение? Поэтому я обращаюсь к секретариату, к вам, председатель Зимбабве. Если готовы представить новую версию, мы бы хотели видеть новую версию, в том числе как первый шаг к дальнейшим обсуждениям. Спасибо, госпожа председатель.
Zimbabwe, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair, for giving us the floor. We had been pressing this button for a long time. Maybe you're not seeing us. So, having listened carefully to the suggestions from the floor, from both observers and parties, and from what you initially proposed, that the document is no longer in its current form of creating a subcommittee for the standing committee, but we had since indicated that we are willing to change that and say we want to establish a permanent forum where indigenous peoples and local communities, those living alongside wildlife, would share experiences, and a related fund will be created to support the coming together of such communities. So we are willing, Chair, to check with the conference if we can resubmit an amended document clearly indicating that we are calling for the creation of a permanent forum as opposed to a subcommittee. But most of the issues that were raised by parties and observers were still referring to the subcommittee, which is correct as the document in its current form refers to the subcommittee. So I just want to check, Chair, if we can resubmit it with the consideration and inclusion of the phrase permanent forum instead of subcommittee. Thank you, Chair.
United States of America, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The U.S. opposes the proposal by Canada. The extent that the issues raised in this proposal from Zimbabwe are within the mandate of the convention, they're already being addressed under different resolutions, such as Resolution Comp 16.6, Rev COP 18, and also in the document 27 on engagement of Indigenous people and local communities, and 29.1 on livelihoods, report of the Standing Committee. So we don't think it is necessary to go back and specifically address this document in those decisions.
Okay, so just reflecting on Zimbabwe's comments on resubmitting an updated version, I think even if submitting an updated version, I think the views from the parties would be more or less the same because the concerns is still about the operational, the resource on Secretariat, into looking all this. So actually my suggestion would be that there needs to be more time and more discussion on this topic intersessionally to refine the contents so that it can probably be put up again at the next COP for consideration. So I'm thinking that we should continue to work on it under document 27 intersessionally. So I want to see if there's, so because by putting the document into document 27, it is directed to the standing committee. So the standing committee will still look at it, and so more discussions can be done there. I would like to see if there's any objection to that. China, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for giving us the floor. I will be very brief. There has been significant progress on IPLC-related matters in other MEAs, including membership and even voting rights. However, regretfully, IPLC issue seems to have stagnated and stayed up in CITES. Discussions on IPLC are not meant to achieve perfection in one step, but to make continuous progress. Therefore, we suggest that we give Zimbabwe some more time to amend relevant provisions to address the concerns expressed by some parties, and China believes that Zimbabwe is willing to show this flexibility. For example, replace the creation of subcommittee with the admission of IPFF specialists in Standing Committee, Animal Committee, and Plants Committee. So at this moment, we can live with your way proposal forward. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Kenya, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, we wanted to align with the US proposal and suggest that we stick to CITES structures already established. The articles of CITES do not envisage establishment of other structures, whether advisory or forums. Madam Chair, we also think that we already have agreed to posting a non-binding guidelines on how we engage with local and indigenous people. And it will be listening to parties during this discussion. It will not really add value in amending the proposal to try and come up with other structures that are outside the text of the convention. I thank you.
European Union, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We seek some clarification because, Chair, what you have suggested would be sending the original document to the Standing Committee. But as far as we understood, the proponent has backtracked on the original document and has amended their suggestion. So maybe as a way forward, and also to save us all some time without cutting Zimbabwe off from any opportunity for further discussions, maybe the proponent could reconsider what exactly their suggestion is and then bring it up in the soon-to-come discussions under agenda item 27 on the engagement of indigenous peoples and local communities, which we surely will have in a new working group when the Standing Committee will set it up. Thank you.
European Union, just a clarification, Agenda 27 has on indigenous people and local communities have been completed already. Because you mentioned soon to be discussed.
If I may respond to that, so my understanding is that we sent agenda item 27 back to the standing committee under one of the draft decisions, which was directed to the standing committee. I think it was 20BB. And under 20BB, yes, which is directed to the SC, letter C is in regards of the engagement with indigenous peoples and local communities at the international level. So we feel that this discussion is well placed there. And from our understanding, that discussion will very likely be continued in a working group once the standing committee sets up the mandate. So with that way, it's our understanding we wouldn't lose more time on this discussion here, but could implement whatever idea Zimbabwe would like to bring forward into those discussions, and then have them in community with all the other ideas on the engagement. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, EU. So what I was proposing earlier was more or less in line with what you said. So I understand the question that Zimbabwe is going to submit a new document, so it's not document 28 anymore. So we can't use document 28. So under document 27, 20BB little c, identify opportunities and limitations of the ideas on engagement with indigenous peoples and local communities in CITES processes at the international level, presented in document SC 78, Doc 27, and other documents. Is that acceptable to everyone? Because we can't use COP20 Doc 828 because it's no longer relevant, because Zimbabwe is going to submit a new one. Zimbabwe, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Just for clarity, but the first thing is we are happy that this week there's a possibility of this week continuing intersessionally. We're not really sure on the modalities of that, but we agree with your suggestion to take this week forward intersessionally. So just now want you to clarify on exactly what's going to be happening so that it's clear on our part as well. I'm prepared to come back with further intervention after you have made clear your proposal. Thank you, Chair.
I'll give the floor to the Secretariat.
Thank you, Chair. The Secretariat's understanding of the Chair's way forward by making a small adjustment to the set of decisions in document 27, 20BB small c, is to encourage Zimbabwe to revise the draft resolution that it has tabled here with minor modifications that are made according to the discussions that you have heard, and submit this at SC 81 under this agenda item on Indigenous peoples and local communities. So it'll be to submit a revised document to the Standing Committee for its consideration at the 81st meeting. Thank you.
Zimbabwe, is that clear?
Thank you, Chair. Exactly, that's very clear. That's what you wanted. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so for Agenda 28, the committee does not accept the proposed resolution in document COP20.28, but then we will make a minor amendment in Agenda 27. If you look at document 27, Annex 2, 20BB, little c, at the end of the sentence, we will add and other relevant documents. So I'll just read out the whole line. Identify opportunities and limitations of the ideas on engagement with Indigenous peoples and local communities in CITES processes at the international level, presented in document SC 78.27 and other relevant documents. United States of America, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. The United States is concerned with the phrase other relevant documents. We're also concerned that we haven't seen the revised approach from Zimbabwe in writing. I think it would be good if, and propose that for this agenda item, that the COP can just invite Zimbabwe to submit a revised proposal to SC 81. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, United States of America. We'll put that in the summary record. Yeah, thanks. Okay, so I'll close this item 28. The next agenda item is 29 on livelihoods. We have two documents, one submitted by the Standing Committee and one submitted by Zambia, who was one of the co-authors of the Standing Committee Working Group. I would like to open and discuss both documents together as they are overlapping. I first give the floor to Zambia to introduce document 29.2 first and explain how it differs from 29.1. Zambia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The document submitted by Zambia contains a revised version of the 6 strategies that has taken into account comments and feedback received at SC 78, as well as a significantly shortened guidance on livelihoods. We believe that these changes represent major compromise as well as a constructive spirit in the hope that we can move the work on CITES and livelihoods forward. Madam Chair, I would like to stress that the guidance on livelihoods has been developed and further improved under the mandates given by Resolution Conf 16.6 on livelihoods and decisions of Conference of Parties 18 and Conference of Parties 19. As a co-chair, former co-chair,
As a former co-chair of the Standing Committee Working Group on Livelihoods, I do recall that a consensus was reached on the 6 strategies contained in the guidance at the in-person joint meeting of the Standing Committee Working Groups on IPLC engagement and also livelihoods, which was held in September 2023 in Peru. It had also gone through changes for improvement after the meeting. Secondly, Madam Chair, the guidance was largely based on the best practices and lessons learned in the CITES and livelihoods case studies collected from across the world in the past many years.
Sorry, Zambia, could you just pause for a moment? Senegal and Congo. What, you can't hear or? Yes, Senegal, yeah.
Nous n'avons pas la translation en français.
Zambia,
Oui,
please.
nous entendons maintenant.
Zambia, sorry, could you restart? Because I think there was some issue with the translation.
I start from the beginning?
Yes, please, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. The document submitted by Zambia contains a revised version of the 6 strategies that has taken into account comments and feedback received as Standing Committee 78, as well as significantly shortened guidance on livelihoods. We believe that these changes represent major compromise as well as a constructive spirit in the hope that we can move the work on CITES and livelihoods forward. Madam Chair, I would like to stress that the guidance on livelihoods has been developed and further improved under the mandates given by the Resolution Conference of Parties 16.6 on livelihoods and decisions of Conference of Parties 18 and Conference of Parties 19. As a former co-chair of the Standing Committee Working Group on Livelihoods, I do recall that a consensus was reached on the 6 strategies contained in the guidance at the in-person joint meeting of the Standing Committee of Working Groups on IPLC engagement and livelihoods, which was held in September 2023 in Peru. It had also gone through changes for improvement after the meeting. Secondly, the guidance was largely based on the best practices and lessons learned in the CITES and livelihoods case studies collected from across the world in the past many years. Such best practices have now been built into this overarching guidance that can be shared with a range of countries of similar species and all stakeholders. The 6 strategies and the guidance will be a valuable tool to guide the future work on CITES and livelihood. Madam Chair and my dear fellow parties, let us face it, regardless of our different views of on trade in CITES-listed species, trade happens and happens in a large scale, with 1 million trade transactions reported by the parties each and every year. However, such trade does not necessarily benefit the poor communities that live side by side with wild species and bear the cost. Madam Chair, I wish to reiterate that the purpose of the guidance is not to promote trade per se, but rather to ensure the enabling policies and environment that will allow the communities that live side by side with the wild species to benefit from legal and sustainable trade, thereby mitigating poverty, reducing human-wildlife conflict, and supporting the fight against poaching and wildlife trafficking. Lastly, Madam Chair, we trust that there is added value in the 6 strategies as well as the full guidance on livelihoods. These are non-binding, I must stress. While we often hear generous and moral support to rural communities in political policy statements, it will be very regrettable, also a shame, if we cannot make progress in this work, which will ensure the concrete support to rural communities through tangible benefits, support species conservation in the meantime. We hope for a positive result and hope for the best. I thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Zambia. We will wrap up for lunch now. It's 12 o'clock, so please be back at 2 o'clock. I think Secretariat has some housekeeping. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. I believe the only housekeeping announcement that I have is that the Budget Working Group is meeting. And also to please be on time at 2 o'clock. I understand that there's another housekeeping announcement.
Sorry, just very quickly, the Credentials Committee will have a quick meeting as well at 12:15. Thank you.
Raised the concern, said, well,